Welcome to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. My name is Guy McPherson. I interview incredible people who've dedicated their lives to helping those who've been impacted by trauma. A big thank you to our sponsors and our guests who are supporting this show.
Hey everyone, I'm really excited to be on today with Stephen Booker, who is a therapist who I've gotten to meet a couple of months ago in one of my trauma training programs. What I want to say is he has a really unique way of working with clients. Super excited to introduce you, Stephen. Thank you for your time. Can you tell us a little bit about you and your work? And yeah, tell us.
Yeah, thank you for having me here. Stephen Booker, I'm a licensed professional counselor. I'm located in Mobile, Alabama, so bottom of the state. And I have been a therapist for uh, actually this month makes 17 years. And I love what I do, really enjoy the work that I do. I've worked in community mental health. I've even found myself in like more vocational ministry, but find myself now since 2012 in private practice and really focus and specialize in the treatment of trauma. And so I am an EMDR certified therapist and approved consultant, which was kind of my introduction to really focusing on trauma, which
Mhm.
then also opened me up to get trained in IFS. And so I'm a level three IFS trained therapist, certified, and also approved clinical consultant. And then around 2019, I also started working with an organization called the Allender Center that has a methodology that's kind of referred to as story work, but formally it's narrative focused trauma care. And the focus of that is engaging story. And so I have
Mhm.
found those three modalities to be really important in my personal and professional work
Yeah.
and have kind of brought them together in a pretty integrative way in how I sit with people.
Yeah. And that's part of why, like when Guy McPherson invited me, I've been on his podcast. Thank you, Guy. Um, to invite people to come on here right away, you came to mind.
Mm,
For those of you who don't know me, I'll just say my name is Esther Goldstein. I'm an anxiety and trauma therapist. I run a trauma training program. And I am really excited about Stephen coming on because one of the things Stephen does and offers in addition to his practice, is that he runs these men's retreats. And on his website, I was fascinated because it's called, what's it called? The story? What do you call it?
yeah, we call it a weekend story retreat. We've kind of played with the name. Sometimes it's like men's
Okay.
story weekend, but yeah.
Okay. So the story retreat, and I think what really made me pause is two pieces. One is that I don't, in terms of the men arena, in terms of talking about like male mental health, but then also the element of what does it mean to really own our story? What does it mean to process our
Mm,
story? Obviously, Stephen, you're very skilled and very trained in a lot of modalities. And I think it takes a certain art to really be able to offer an experience to clients to tap into a part of themselves that they have not yet tapped into. So I wonder if you
mm,
can tell us, my hope for today is, can you tell us a little bit about what it means, like to own your story, different than just kind of telling our story, because people could repeat their stories again and again and not feel a shift
mhm,
and not actually make any progress. So what is it, if we can just dive right in, like what does it mean to really
mhm.
own the story? And if you could tell us a little bit about your work, and then we could look at like how the storytelling really has or can transform people's traumas, anxieties, or patterns.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, when I hear you even say own your story, I think that there's a way that we can engage story that feels very like cut off from the neck. It's very cerebral. It's very like I just want to like understand or I
Mhm.
want to just like have some analysis of the story, but really leaves everything that's held energetically below the neck and even around the body kind of out offline and disconnected from the story. And so part of owning the story, I think, is really getting close to the story. Now, of course, like some people, like it makes sense why they don't want to get close to their stories. And so there has to be consideration for that, like what feels safe, what feels contained, what feels resourced enough to engage. But it's about being able to get close to the younger parts of yourself that really hold story that was desperate to be tended, desperate to be attuned to. I think about like Peter Levine's quote about like trauma being like an absence of a compassionate witness. Like it's not the experience itself, it's that isolation. It's what was needed that was not offered in the presence of immense pain, heartache, harm. And so, helping men in particular to own their story, part of that is helping them to get closer to their bodies, closer to what is
Mm.
occurring as they tell their stories in their bodies, getting curious about what is their body saying in the midst of engaging those stories.
What kind of people, what do you find like holds people back in general, maybe specifically men from coming close to their stories? Because we all want to feel whole, we all want to feel alive. Um, is it that they don't know how to do it? Is it that they're afraid? Is it that they don't have the right facilitator? Like, what do you think holds people back?
Mm,
And then I would do wonder what then actually, what's the fire underneath people that actually propels them to then reach the help or to come to a retreat like yours? Like, I want to understand that process.
yeah. I mean, it's a really good question. I don't know that I have one answer. I imagine there's probably
Yeah,
many, but
yeah.
what comes up for me when I think about that, um, there's so much need, but there's not a lot of template. And so
Mm,
like culturally, like there's a lot of, especially in this like cultural moment we find ourselves in, there are a lot of examples of really toxic masculinity, and there's just not a lot of template as like what does it look like to engage with a more embodied telling of your story? What does it look like to engage and to celebrate like goodness of your masculinity and places where there's heartbreak or even brokenness? And so without that template, I think there's just a lack of awareness or a lot of shame that's just kind of dissociated or like stuffed down in a way that people really want to hold a narrative about themselves that feels maybe safer than to really hold the fullness of their experiences, both like light and shadow in that. I think I've trailed off a little bit from your question. Can you repeat that
no,
first part
no, I'm
again?
actually thinking about like you're sharing in such a profound way, and I'm wondering, like, say there's a person listening right now.
Yeah.
Um, okay, any like sexual identity, but like, and they're resonating with the concept of like they own their story or they're aware of their story, and story can mean
Mm-hmm.
like a past, a belief,
Mm-hmm.
version,
Mm-hmm.
pain. Um, and they relate to like the cut from the neck off, and they're disconnected from the energetic field, like you're mentioning.
Mm-hmm.
What would be a step someone can start taking? Like, what do you do on your retreats? Why do people reach out? Like, give us a little bit more. Like, I'm trying to imagine somebody comes, what
Mm-hmm.
give us a sample? Like, what's their struggle? And what does it actually look like tangibly that allows them to then actually, yes, get a little closer to their story?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, certainly there are some people that find me and are really curious about the work because of maybe some affiliation or connection to the Allender Center or to internal family systems work or EMDR. But in general, I think what often comes up is that there's crisis or
Mm.
there's something that is disruptive in their life and unsettling. It could be a style of relating or like a character strategy that's showing up that's becoming really problematic or costly. Um, and there's been some curiosity as how did this come to be? Like how did I come to
Mm.
relate in this way that is like it feels like as natural as breathing, and yet it is really creating a lot of chaos in my relationships and in my even way of relating to myself. So I think
Give
a
me
lot of times,
examples. Like, bring it home. Like, what kind of samples? Just to the general public. What kind of ways of relating are you finding that then people are like, oh, obviously, but it's actually causing me harm?
yeah. So for example, like a workaholic
Mm.
situation where like I'm working all of these hours and I love my family, but like I'm aware also that I'm finding a lot of life in work. I found a lot of
Mm.
validation in work. Maybe I feel more insecure in the realm of being a husband or being a father or being a
Mm.
partner. And so I love and want to spend that time, and yet I keep finding myself working 60, 70, 80 hours a week.
Mm,
And I'm also like starting to have high blood pressure, and I'm starting to like my health, my physical health is
yeah,
beginning
yeah,
to be impacted. And so at some point, I'm just trying to figure out like for in this example, like
yeah.
what what's what's happening here? Like, can I slow things down and zoom out a bit and then begin to zoom in to find like where did this begin? How did this come to be in my world or my way of relating to the world and myself?
So tell us how you walk people through the process because I'm wondering, like, because I at the end I want to better, like, if there's a one or two tidbits or takeaways, because what I'm already
Hmm.
starting to hear is like one is when you have a struggle, you might be detached from your story, whatever that
Hmm.
story is. It could be like a loss or a pain point or something internally that's not processed,
Hmm.
right? Or
Hmm.
hasn't been given a space. So I would love to hear if you're open. I know
Hmm.
you do a lot of this in individual work. I just wonder when it comes to, let's say, a retreat, what's the
Hmm.
process or what's the format that people walk through?
Yeah. You just kind of want me to give you like an idea of like start to finish?
Yeah, if that's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
I'm
yeah. Yeah, of course. No,
fascinated.
no, 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 I'm happy. So someone reaches out because there's something, there's a curiosity, or maybe it's like a partner that's like, you've got to do something. This looks like it might be a really good jumping off point, or maybe they're being referred because their therapist is like, maybe an intensive experience would be really helpful to maximize some time and potential progress. And so whenever they reach out, I just give them some prompts around like, where's a place in a formative story that feels like it still has a hold, like you feel kind of tangled up in it in some way, and it has something that needs engagement that you do not feel totally well with. It may just be some energetic charge that still lingers
Mm,
there. And so I'm not inviting people to bring like their absolute top worst trauma, but
yeah.
sometimes people will take some big risks in these spaces because of they're really just longing for connection and healing and presence. And so that person is given some, directions around writing a narrative.
Mm,
Typically, 2 to 3 pages is what we're looking for. Too small of a narrative, sometimes it almost feels like there's a way they're not wanting to be engaged. Too large of a narrative, it's like I'm just going to take up all the space in the room, and you're not. And so, like, we're trying to offer a lot of containment in even what they write and how they write that narrative. And then we invite them into a very first of all, like nurturing weekend. We have someone that comes that does all of the cooking, make sure that there's
mm,
coffee around the clock, that there's snacks available 24/7. And so they come, they get settled in, they find their place to stay. And I go first, myself and the person that I do these retreats with, and we share our own stories because we don't want to
mm.
invite people someplace that we're not also willing to enter in and to invite them into within our own selves. And I find it's fascinating the things that still will come up in these spaces with new faces and new sets of eyes that are seeing my story. So it's really a beautiful experience. But I will read my story and we go over some like containment ideas for the group and group rules and everything. And then I invite them in to engage me. Like, what did they notice? What did they notice in their bodies as I was reading? Where did they feel
Mm.
me close to my story, like close to the emotion, close to that younger self? Where do they feel me kind of pull back or feel really distant? And so through that process, the invitation is to deeper, truer naming in the story. And I think what so much of this work is, in my opinion, is just like an invitation to grieve what hasn't been grieved or what needed to be grieved and held in safety. And so that's kind of the first event. And then the rest of the weekend
Wait, hold on
is,
one second. This is
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah,
profound
yeah.
because can I pause you for a minute?
Of course.
Okay, so it's this weekend.
Hmm.
So it's this weekend. You have a co-facilitate, you have someone that runs it with you. It's a group,
Hmm.
beautiful place, food, so there's like
Hmm.
physical nourishment as well. And the
Hmm.
writing of the story is basically think about something from your formative years or something that is like coming in, like basically you're writing a story, just kind of saying the story of something that feels unfinished and kind of just
Hmm.
writing. I just want to so and then just writing it out.
Hmm.
And the writing it out is basically like giving it language, obviously also like giving it a word and a narrative. And then you share. and the other
Hmm.
person, and then do people, and then they notice internally, somatically what's happening, and then do people go around the room and share their story of what they shared, so they get that support from each other?
You mean, yes, yes, yes. So throughout the weekend, we have like a rotation where everyone has about a 45-minute period where they read their story and then it's
Wow.
engaged by the group.
Wow. Okay, this is what I'm asking because it's almost like it's not just me and
Yeah.
myself, it's me, myself, and then others. And then there's getting
Hmm.
that because you're essentially saying that when we are acting in a certain way or acting out or
Hmm.
avoiding or behaving in a certain way, there's unconsciously, tell me if I'm getting this right,
Hmm.
an untended to part or story or
Hmm.
dynamic that has been untended to. And so what
Yes.
you're saying is this weekend or this process is a way of you getting closer to that untended part that's actually bleeding out or shutting down or
Hmm.
acting at these behaviors. And so
Hmm.
as we tend to it, this will often soften. So the symptoms will actually soften. Okay. It's profound. Okay, carry on.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
No, thank you. I love how you put it. And so throughout the weekend, like that's what the work looks like. Now I will say we book a very large rental on the Gulf of Mexico right there overlooking the water. So like there's beauty
Wow.
and in the midst of nourishment. Now it's usually in the off season, it's usually in January, and so it's sometimes cold. Actually, this past year it wasn't that cool at all. But we have fires in the evenings. We have lots of built-in downtime for reflection, for
Yeah.
journaling, for board games and cards, uh, resting, napping, taking walks on the beach, going for the run, like whatever is needed to just tend to your nervous system and your body throughout the weekend. So it's not like bam, 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 bam. Like we have these focused times in the morning, and then we have a focused time in the evening, and then the space
Mm.
before, in the middle, in between, and then in the evening is really just for recreation, play, taking in beauty, connecting, having, yeah, just points of connection with the other men that are a part of the
Yeah.
group.
I love that. And one thing I do want to say, because it was really important, is you mentioned a lot of times there's grief. And it's so
Hmm.
powerful because, right, they talk about how like anger is a secondary emotion to sadness, and sadness is often grief or loss. And I
Hmm.
find it really powerful how, because we act out grief if it's ignored or pain.
Hmm.
It's powerful how you're saying a lot of this is grief, and actually with the right
Hmm.
kind of compassionate witness, right? We
Hmm.
can't avoid grief, but we can actually process it or be with it. Um,
Hmm.
okay, carry on.
Yeah. And so like the whole, so it starts on a Thursday evening, and then we have a full day Friday and a full day Saturday, and it's all moving to a Sunday morning time. And that Sunday morning time is really focused on affirmation and blessing and just honoring of the men. And that is such a deeply profound time because I learned this from a mentor of mine years ago. His name's Wendell Moss, and he talked about you can't bless what you haven't grieved what it's cost. And that just really like stuck with me because I think
Mm,
oftentimes like so much of our goodness, it's been really costly too. It's set us up for envy. It set us up for strife. It set us up for heartache or disappointment or consumption and exploitation. And so to be able to honor a man and his story, you have to enter into the story. And to enter into the story, you have to also like join them in grieving their goodness, their beauty, and what that's cost them and how that has been really connected in some ways to their harm and their heartache. And so that time of blessing is really what we're moving towards. Not that like it's the ultimate pinnacle, but like it is kind of the climax of the weekend.
wow. Say that sentence again. You can't bless.
Yeah, I'm trying to think how he puts it. You cannot bless what you have what you have not also grieved, like what or how it has been costly, whatever it is that you're blessing. So, like, let me say it a different way to make it clear. You can't bless goodness and beauty without also grieving what it has cost that person.
Yeah. Could you give us some examples?
Yeah. Um, I mean, for one example, like being like a very loving, nurturing, caring person, and then finding also that like there's been such exploitation of that. Maybe it was like triangulation with their parents. And
Mm,
then there's also like envy from the other siblings because of how that
mm,
person found a way to get some delight, some attunement, some connection with
mm,
caretaking of a parent, which was a really lovely, like beautiful gift. And gosh, it's been so costly.
Yeah. Wow. And give me another one. Give me another example. I'm just trying to think.
On the fly. Let me think of something really quickly. Um, yeah, think about like someone's energetic presence. Like they just have a charismatic way of being in the room where people are just drawn to them. And sometimes that can set up for um, like envy. Like people will
Mm-hmm.
hate them for that because they want that and they want to kill them for the fact that they actually have that.
I really appreciate what you're saying because I feel like what you're doing here on both levels and like writing the story and then the celebration is you're naming the nuance and the layers that often we skip over. And it's
Hmm.
almost like I'm thinking, even let's say somebody who's a workaholic, right? Or is very driven.
Hmm.
And it's almost like maybe it's incredible because it helped them get out of if they were raised in a
Hmm.
very poor environment or they didn't
Hmm.
have choice points. And
Right.
the price point of needing to build from survival has
That's
also
right.
been, right? Maybe like anxiety or exhaustion or fear. And so it's like I think about somebody who's living in a beautiful mansion without acknowledging the sleepless nights or the fights or the fear, whatever it is, it's like we
Hmm.
want to acknowledge both and then you could
Hmm.
bless it, which is what I so appreciate in
There's a
what
lot
you're
of
saying.
tension, a lot of tension
Yeah.
in it. Yeah. And the
So,
thing is
yeah.
that I think a lot of times like it's so much easier to write a narrative of harm, but to like to
Mm,
also find like where's their goodness and beauty in this person in the story that may actually be somehow connected to the harm that they've written about. Like
mm,
that's where getting into the particularity of the story and then entering into grief so that you can also like really honor and affirm that goodness. That's where I think the intersection really occurs.
yeah. What do you love most about running the retreat? Or yeah, of
Oh my goodness. I mean, here's the thing. It's exhausting. Like it's a long
course.
weekend.
Yeah.
You're probably not sleeping a lot because we're sitting around the fire until way too late and then having to get up to get breakfast because we got it our first session that morning. And being away from my family is not ideal. I have two young kids and I love being with them on the weekends, but it impacts me. Like it does something
Mm,
for me. So selfishly, I really just love the embodied experience. I mean, I haven't had a lot of templates or examples of healthy masculinity. And so to both cultivate and co-create a space that
mhm.
welcomes and is very hospitable and inviting to that type of I would say in some ways like more redemptive masculine presence and connection. And then to also like I don't escape that either. I benefit from it in what
Mm,
I'm actually helping to co-create and cultivate.
yeah. I'm asking because I find like being a therapist, like I think that clients change me almost more than I'm changing them. It's like, and
Mm,
as you're talking about this, I'm like, this is so powerful. And I think there's some real beauty in the way that you almost bring yourself into the story.
mm,
Um, what do you say? What would you say to someone? I guess I have two questions. Like one
hmm.
is like actually specific to male and masculinity, and one is more just like
Good.
all of us. But say there's like a male who feels like, yeah, they don't have a template around like healthy masculinity, or they have like a lot that they haven't grieved or celebrated.
Hmm.
Is there like a question or something that they could reflect on for themselves, other than finding you and joining your program, which we'll talk about soon? But
Yeah.
what can they do? Like if a person is feeling in a lost space,
Mm,
something for them to think about, to read, like what would help?
mm. I want to sit with it for a second and just kind of
Take your time.
tap into it. I think for men, especially, there's a lot of pressure to kind of know, like to have
Mm,
answers, to have direction, to have purpose. And it feels really vulnerable to say, I don't know, or like to feel directionless, or even in some ways powerless, like to admit that. Like there's a
yeah,
lot of shame, I think, particularly because of so many of the legacy burdens and things that
yeah,
like masculinity
yeah,
holds in and of itself,
yeah.
especially in our culture. And so, like, I think to just invite men to notice, like, even if it's hard to name it with someone else, like, where do you feel most fragile? Where do you
Mhm.
feel that insecurity? And the tendency is push that away, focus in on something else, or to like get really big, right? To kind of inflate, to
Mm.
conflate, like to take on a posture that feels almost larger, so they don't actually have to face that place of insecurity
Mhm.
or fragility inside. But I think like, what would it look like? So the question would be like, what would it look like to just sit with that insecurity or fragility and to just see if you can get enough space inside to listen and to wonder, what does it want you to know?
Mm.
If that fragility or that insecurity could speak, like, what would it say? Maybe it's just like, I'm scared. I don't know what to do. I'm going to die. And to
Mm.
just really pay attention and to get curious about, like, how long has that been there inside? When did that start? And I think if there can be, and I mean, this is so much of the work of so many modalities, like if there can just be enough space and openness and curiosity, I think everything we need to know is just waiting to be engaged and held. Now, of course, there's complexity that can come up, but
Well,
that would
yeah,
be a
that's where
question I would
therapy
invite.
is. But I
Yeah.
think this is a beautiful starting point because it's interesting. Like, I think the toxic part of anything but specific masculinity is almost like you keep saying space, which I love because it's almost like when there's clutter or rushness, there's actually, if you really want to have like healthy masculinity or healthy power or guidance or direction, the only way is if there's space.
Hmm.
And so, what essentially you're saying, obviously, when deeper things come up, they would need a counselor and to do
Sure,
the
sure,
depth
sure.
work. But I think even beginning, what you're saying is stay like go where it's uncomfortable, go where what your
Hmm.
body is asking, because when we escape it, it actually haunts us or like
That's right.
robs us, right? Or like I,
Yeah.
right, when you're saying kind of you feel very
Or
safe,
hijacks us in some ways. Yeah.
hijacks, right?
Mm.
Or even to make that bigger. That was really helpful. That was profound.
Mm. Well, and I love
Um,
what you're highlighting about space because that's what this is. Like this weekend is space. Like we encourage people to try to put away any distractions and phones and social media and to really just have time for presence and connection, but also deeply reflective times.
yeah.
So it is kind of like creating space that's hard to find in their, 9 to 5 or everyday worlds.
Yeah, and well, the space also inside, because what you're saying is almost like surround.
Hmm.
I almost look at it as like there's something in pain or fear based, and some of us, or like you said, have a tendency, but specifically men, like get bigger to like
Yeah.
prove, or to
Hmm.
avoid, or to shut it down. And you're basically saying,
Right.
actually, let's just like circle around it and
Hmm.
give it some attention because we're actually going to get really important information. Now,
That's
for
right. Yeah.
some, that might be enough. For others, they would need to do some like deeper one-on-one counseling, even if they're not doing a
Totally.
retreat. Um, and then what would you say to someone who is aware that they have a story? Because like does it need to be a trauma story, or could it just be a story that's searing through them? Like, you tell us a little bit about this modality. Um, I guess I want to, like, for anyone who's maybe feeling disconnected or a client,
Mm,
like, how does somebody start getting a little closer or get to understand their story a little bit? Like, what would you, is there that prompt that you shared, or is there something to think about that can help someone
hmm.
get a little closer to
Hmm.
what's going on inside?
I mean, there's a lot of debate around like what's trauma, what's not trauma. And, I mean, I don't know that we have to categorize anything. I
Yeah.
think to say, like, where's a point of heartbreak? Where's a
Mm.
point of shame? Where was there a point of maybe like striving even? Like, well, what was that about? Like to just notice like what do you hold inside, especially when you reflect back. A lot of these stories are not always, but often are intersecting with family of origin. So like when you think back to like what was your role? How did you operate? And how did that come to be?
Mm.
What does that feel connected to? Maybe you were the chosen one, the golden child. Maybe you were the scapegoat. Maybe you were the one that was always in trouble. Maybe you're the one that dad was harder on than the other
Mm.
sibling.
Mhm.
Or maybe mom was really emotional and needy for you, and
Mm.
dad saw that. What was it like for dad to see that? What was it like for dad's eyes to be on you as mom's reaching for you to comfort her?
Mm.
Like so many different possibilities. But I just think what holds energy, what holds charge in you that feels familiar? Because I think these things just reenact again and again and again and again. And that's the beauty of this work, is because I think the more that you do it, there is a softening, I think is what you used earlier. And like symptoms soften. And it doesn't mean that it totally goes away, but like you're not bound to those familiar patterns and roles. And it creates more agency, it creates more choice, and it creates more clarity that in those moments you're like, oh, there that is again. And can also, like in real time, in some ways, like offer care and reparent yourself in that moment of like, oh, of course that's showing up right now. I see that. And I don't have to live my life just playing these same scripts over and over again, these same narratives.
I find this so profound because I feel like what happens is that a lot of we all talk about telling our story. We all talk about like awareness, and many people, and some are not aware. And so if you're not aware, the first step is to become aware. But what we're speaking to right here is the people who are aware, but you're going a layer deeper where it's like we are unconsciously, I see it in my own life, right? Times where we repeat certain patterns. And what you're saying is, I love the sample you gave about, okay, obviously it could be like the chosen child or the one carrying the shame or the scapegoat or the
Mhm.
troublemaker or the ignored one. But even the sample that you went in on like if mom was emotionally needy from you and dad had to like was constantly tracking, right? His eyes were always on you because there's this energetic pull from her to you and how he felt
Mhm.
about that. That implicit and unconscious dance was encoded in you and your persona, right? And your energy and how you carry yourself. And a struggle you're having right now might often be
Mhm.
related to that unconscious enactment. And if you want to undo
Mhm.
that, it is so important to become aware of that. So even just that awareness, and then even noticing your pattern, obviously you could do deeper work like somatically or with EMDR or parts work.
Mhm.
Um, but I think even just starting, what I'm loving about this conversation is even starting to look deeper at the story,
Mhm.
and the way that it engraved something on you and how to kind of almost, right, like I'm almost imagining someone like unleash from that.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, that is so
Mhm.
powerful.
Well, especially when you think about, and I'm not trying to like go too much deeper into that scenario, but like, have, have you ever considered what is it like for you for mom to pull you in close?
Yeah,
How did you feel about that?
yeah,
Probably really ambivalent,
right,
because in some ways I don't want this,
right.
and I feel really powerful that she's choosing me.
Mm,
And so there's a lot of complexity. And then to be curious about what was, when you looked at dad's face, like what was his face saying to you in those moments?
mm,
What was there
mm,
envy in him? Or was there a way that he was going to make you pay for how mom was pulling you in? Or was he relieved because he didn't have
mm.
capacity? And like, there's just so many places that these
Yeah,
stories can open up. But then the curiosity is in like, and how has that impacted every relationship with a man that you've had? So many implications and curiosities to hold in story.
yeah. Yeah, and when we do this work, actually the shifts are really out. Like we start seeing shifts, right? I think the exciting part for us as therapists is
Yes.
like as we do this work, the beauty is that when we start seeing those shifts and like doorways open or dynamics
Mm,
soften or I know that's what excites us. So before we wrap
mm.
up, Stephen, could you tell us how people could find out about working with you one-on-one or for your retreats? Tell us. Yeah, tell us.
Yeah, so you can go to my website. It's www.booker, Booker, LPC, .com. And my email address is Steven, Steven, at bookerlpc.com.
Amazing. And in terms of clients, one-to-one clients, what states are you licensed to work in if people cannot? Yeah.
Yeah, so I offer consultation to anyone nationwide, but specifically for therapy work, Alabama and Florida.
Okay.
Mhm.
Stephen, this has been such a delight.
Mm,
This conversation, thank you. I'm actually going to reflect on doing some of my own story work from this. I
mm.
really appreciate this conversation and your time. Thank you
Thank you,
so
Esther. It
much.
really feels, yeah, just a deep privilege that you would invite me. Thank you. I feel grateful.
Yeah.